Hi there. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Crystal Wittevrongel, collaborating with Common Sense Edmonton, here today with Sara Awatta, who is running for Edmonton City Council in the pihêsiwin ward. Sara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love to hear more about your background and the foundation that you're bringing with you to City Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background spans geology and environmental economics and policy. I've worked abroad with nonprofits and governments to help settle marginalized and refugees from different countries and getting them integrated into the communities they're moving to. And here in Edmonton, I run a consulting agency where I work with nonprofits, small businesses, helping them transition from different places. So if they're starting their business, making sure they're operationally sound and ready for success. And if they are in operation, making sure that their next level of growth is sustainable.
Wonderful. And so you sound like you're quite involved in your community. And so, what are some of the priorities in your community and in your ward for this election?
Yeah, so I'm finding that there are three top concerns and priorities that the residents here are looking for. Number one is safety, and that comes in different forms. So safety in their streets, and that can come from just making sure that the break-ins and vehicle safety, but also making sure that the increase in traffic due to construction reroutes are not impacting the residents. So we've heard a lot of concerns from parents and seniors that the roads don't feel as safe anymore, whether it's due to increased traffic or to the rerouting of buses. Also, in terms of youth programming, there's a bit of concern from parents about ice time or availability of programming where the young kids can go and do other things that are impactful for them. The other concern is with business communities, whether lacking is support. There, we don't really have a centralized service for small businesses to contact the city and understand what is it they need to open their doors. Finding that permitting time can take up to 2 years for some of them, and that is a huge concern. Also, we don't have a business association in this area, so that's a concern that I've heard quite a bit, and that's something I'm looking to solve.
Hmm. And what
Mhm.
about in the area of property taxes? I know folks in Edmonton are really feeling the
Mhm.
pinch from repeated increases. Has that been something brought up in your ward as well?
Absolutely. Affordability is something else that's top of mind. And with that, it comes down to property taxes and also seeing our core services decline. So with our fire department, they're severely underfunded and our roads are not cleared out the snow in time. Parks are not being serviced as often. So I'm seeing that impact people across the board. And the basis of that is our budget, right? So when we can talk about that a bit later, I'm sure it's a question that you have coming up.
No, let's dive right into it.
Okay.
So what is your
Perfect.
perspective then on the way that the city is managing it? It's spending, but with
Mhm.
also taking property taxes and increasing property taxes
Mhm.
into account as well.
Absolutely. So with our budget right now, I feel we're spending a lot on projects. We're not seeing the city as a whole. We're treating it as different silos. So when we're thinking about some construction, we're redoing the same street 2, 3 times. We're fixing the sidewalk, we're adding a bike path, and then we're doing road reconstruction, right? So we're doing the same project 3 times, and that really does impact how much we're spending, right? So we do need to look at the city as a whole, as opposed to in the silos that we're doing it right now. And that goes back to it goes back to taxpayers, right? We're increasing their taxes. We're not paying for the services that we do need. Part of my priorities in the first 100 days in office would be to revisit the budget, really look at the impact of the projects that we do have. Do we need them now? Do we need them maybe in the next 3, 4 years? But part of that is we're not also planning for the future. Edmonton is a growing city, and it's not something that we could avoid in terms of our planning. So as we're building new communities and anticipating the growth, we need to plan for that. What we've been doing is we're just putting out fires, and by the time we put it, it's now a new fire. So we really need to lean on our resources, be really innovative, and tighten the budget, but not necessarily reduce services.
And so what would your approach be to property taxes? Would you be in favor of freezing them or reducing them, or are you more on the side of keeping them, where they are or increasing?
So I'm on the side of let's aim to reduce or maintain, but we are still a growing city and services need to be paid for. So it's what can we reduce. And what I've heard from a lot of property owners is that they're not, um, the concern isn't just the rising costs, is that they're not seeing the return of their investment in the rising costs.
Yeah.
So people are okay paying for it, and I do support that. It's what are we getting in return, right? And I think we've lost sight of that. The taxes are not just like an abstract number we're putting in; these are actually
Mhm.
people's hard-earned money. So how can we utilize that in a way that's impactful and adds to our economy?
And so when it comes to
Mhm.
spending, what are your thoughts on the way that the city council, current city council, is spending?
I don't think it's sustainable. We're not spending on our core services and we're not funding them the way that we should be. Our ice removal or snow removal services are not, that budget is not increasing the way it should. Our fire department funding is not increasing the way it should, but other departments and other services are increasing. So, and that's my major concern. And that's the major concern for a lot of residents I spoke with over the last year as I've been door knocking. So it's how are we spending our money right now is not sustainable and it's causing us more harm than good.
And so what are some areas you'd be willing to look at reducing, if need be, in order to put that money towards some of the other services that are perhaps more needed in the community?
It will be revisiting our capital budget expenses, right? That's our biggest expense line. Also, our loan repayment is quite big. So it's what are we doing to make sure that we're not increasing that, reducing it, reducing here, and then spending on things that we do need.
hmm
Mhm.
hmm Well,
Another,
and there's
so I just wanted to add something because it's not just about reducing our budget. We also need to increase our revenue. And so
mhm,
supporting small businesses, making sure that they are profitable and they're able to contribute to our economy is the other huge factor to making sure that we're not increasing taxes for small business for homeowners. So like it really goes hand in hand. It's one part of reducing our expenses. And that's just making sure that we're spending it on things that we do need, but also
mhm.
increasing our revenue so we're able to cover the gap.
And so some folks have also voiced concerns over in recent years, city government appears to take on things outside of its core mandate or
Mhm.
policies or programs outside of its core mandate that costs money for the city and it perhaps damages relationships at the provincial level or other, down the road impacts. Do you
Mhm.
have any insight on that? Do you agree with people who think that? Is the city spending in things that it shouldn't be or doing things outside its core mandate?
Sometimes, but there's also a need for us to act because at the end of the day, it's people. Like at some point, we need to think about the people we're impacting, right? So, our relationship with our provincial governments sometimes is, difficult. But at the end of the day, we do have to work with them. We can't put our head in the sand and we can't also name call, right? It needs to be a working, respectful relationship that goes both ways because at the end of the day, we're all serving Edmontonians, we're all serving Albertans, making sure that we are served well and no one is left behind. So some things we do have to do, and it might not be convenient, it might be a little expensive, but the overall expense will be higher in the long term if no one causes an action or like actions them.
hmm And so
Mhm.
in recent years, the relationship between city council and the provincial government has appeared strained to
Mhm.
outsiders. How would you go about building that trust with the provincial government, but also showcasing that to residents so they know that the orders of government are working together?
Yeah, so it's going to be having that honest, tough conversations. It's not going to be an easy task, but at this level, we all are very reasonable people who really want to serve our constituents the best we can. And that comes from having that level of respect that goes both ways and engaging in meaningful dialogue to make sure that we can reach a decision that works best for everybody. And compromises really have to be made all around. But that doesn't mean that I will not continue to advocate for our best interests of the city.
And how do you showcase to people in your ward or residents of Edmonton that you are trying to work with the province if you're in city council?
So that's town hall meetings, like making sure that they are informed of the meetings I'm having, updates afterwards. I really believe in two-way communication. And that's something that I've heard over and over from residents as I knock on their doors. They have never had their doors knocked before. They really do feel removed from the city and how the city does operate. So making sure that the newsletters are going out, town halls are being created, and making sure people are engaged.
hmm Another area where residents have, said that they didn't feel like they were heard or listened to is the infill development policy and how that has
Mhm.
rolled out in the city of Edmonton. What are your thoughts on that policy and in the approach that the city took in the way it unfolded?
It's a bit of extremes, and I felt like it was very much it was politicized with the election. So I don't think this would have the right time, honestly, for us to have this bylaw passed. But from what I've heard of the doors and from my perspective, in my area, that's not much of a concern yet. Over the years, it definitely will be. But as we're thinking about infills, we really need to look at how many cars we're bringing in, the capacity for the infrastructure, so schools, hospitals, also our fire department, our health department, all those things need to be put into account as we're approving infills. It's not just a 4, 6, 8, or 12 number. It's really, we have to look at each community and review it that way.
And so, how do you think about, or what do you think about the need for densification and balancing it with something like the infill development policy?
Yeah, so we definitely do. We can't keep sprawling out and not expect our property taxes to go up. We can't keep sprawling out and, without the increased need of services and partnership with the provincial government to make sure we have enough schools and enough hospitals. So it's a very balanced mix of having infills in our core neighborhoods and supporting the sprawl. So it's yeah, it's a balance. Like, and I'm not an expert in city planning, and it's something that I think all of us at council need to recognize is we need to lean into the professionals, take their advice, but also we can't over densify an area and expect it to go well.
And how do you see public engagement in this policy and others like it being shaped by public opinion of how this was handled in the future?
I think we definitely need to have more open houses before we do pass any of these bylaws, and it's a mix of people who are currently impacted and people who are going to be impacted in the future, and balancing those two.
hmm Yeah, it's definitely
Mhm.
a tough thing to navigate. And there's been a lot of talk as well about transit-oriented development or densifying around existing transit stations or future planning.
Mhm.
And what are your thoughts on how this city is currently managing transit safety? I know that's a big concern for a lot of Edmontonians. Ridership is stagnant at best. And
Mhm.
safety is really something we need to reconsider. What are your thoughts on that and what the city should do there?
Absolutely. So I do agree with densifying along the route. That is why we planned it this way, right? So let's go and it's a big part of as we're in office. It's we're planning for something, but then we shift and we don't know why we shifted and we lose the original perspective of why we built something the way we did. And then we're spending more money and more resources that we don't have, right? So in terms of public safety and LRT, I've heard from a lot of parents, they don't feel safe sending their kids on the bus. They don't feeling safe sending their kids on transit. So they're having to drive their 16-year-old or 17-year-old, or having to get them cars, having to get them, insurance, gas, and that's already increases their unaffordability for their day-to-day life, right? So it goes beyond whether people want to ride the bus or not. It's that their safety and affordability in line. So we do need to go back to offer having more resources available at the stations. The current, I know they've retrained a few of the services people there to be able to respond faster, but we do need more presence, but also we need more services in terms of to get people away from being in that situation. So more wraparound services, retraining services. There's a program with Edmonton Police Service to have social workers and mental health professionals right along with police officers to
Mhm.
de-escalate certain situations where that's needed. And I believe in transit areas, that is really where it's needed the most. So how are we
Mhm.
utilizing programs that we do have that are currently working to have the solutions that we need?
Mhm. And so what about things like fare gates or gates, closed gate system? Is that something you'd be willing to consider in order to, have an area restricted to only those who are using transit?
That's a bit difficult with our city when it gets too cold, right? Because on the alternative, people can die. And this year we've had the most amputations, we've had the most deaths. So it's a bit of how are we making sure people feel safe, but also that people are safe in terms of in times that they do need it, right? So at this
Hmm.
time, I do not support that.
And so working with the province is a huge part of that, right? Because there's, mental health and addictions and healthcare are provincial jurisdictions. So how do you
Absolutely.
see kind of leveraging that relationship to be able to further provide services for those folks who are maybe in those spaces that don't need to be in those spaces?
Absolutely. So it's really having to have a conversation with the provincial government, present them with data, right? Because that's really at the end of the day, numbers do speak the loudest. So providing that if we are able to remove people from these situations, what is the impact of that? And we do have, I think there was a house here that was opened, and within the first year, and I'm not looking at long-term impact, within the first year, it was net positive in terms of instead of this person being arrested 200 times a year, that person being in a hospital over 200 times a year, being in this house, they were able to reduce the cost that they were impacting to in our taxes. So what can
Hmm.
we do with those numbers? Can we have more of those? Can we retrain people so they're out of those situations once they go through these programs, right? So if we're able to show the provincial government that it's not just we need the money and that's it. It's we're really raising people to so that they're able to be, provide to our economy as well.
Hmm. And to back to the safety piece, some other candidates in various wards have been in support of having more EPS, like riding the train
Mhm.
or in the stations. Is that something that you'd be in favor of, the EPS side of it, rather than like a transit officer or a peace officer?
So I think it would be EPS with social workers. So that program, it's called like Help, and then there's two programs offered by EPS where it pairs them with a mental health professional, and that really does help de-escalate situations and reduce any negative things that might happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
And so that kind of brings me to the EPS, or the Edmonton Police Service,
Mhm.
and the issues in recent years between EPS and City Council and the Police Commission, and the strained relationship that has at
Mhm.
least been looking that way up from the outside. What are your thoughts on that relationship, and how do we strengthen that to move forward to show residents that the city is working with EPS and the Police Commission all together to the benefit of residents?
Yeah, and I think the basis of that relationship is transparency and accountability. And what the city's looking for is understanding where our biggest budget item is going, right? And I've heard that from the doors. People do want EPS around, and we do, we need police services, but it's understanding where's that money going, so that people feel that, okay, this is where it's going, right? And that's the missing piece. It's accountability and transparency. And that's the piece between city council and DPS. It's that accountability piece and transparency. In terms of recent years, yes, there has been progress in a lot of community programming with EPS, and there has been some issues with communities as well. So it's what are we doing to bridge that gap? Because there's that city council, and then there's EPS and communities. So we need to do work together because at the end of the day, they are a basic core service for us, and we need to make sure
Mhm.
that residents feel safe to call the police, and people do feel that they are provided for.
Mhm. And to that point that you mentioned about the financial transparency or the accountability piece,
Mhm.
how do you balance operational autonomy of the EPS with the need for council oversight or some of that transparency piece when it relates to budgeting?
And I don't think it's the accountability and oversight, or I think it's two different buckets. Understanding where the biggest budget line items are is not the
Mhm.
same as us going in and saying you can or cannot spend your money that way. It's just understanding where does the money go versus
Mhm.
how they should spend their money. It's a very different conversation.
Mhm. Mhm. And then with regards to the public, what role do you see the public playing in keeping institutions like the EPS accountable, just overall?
That's an interesting question. So in terms of, and it's a big one, right? Because there's accountability. Is it in spending? Is it in how they show up in community? Is it how they respond to community, right? And I think that question is answered differently by different individuals, by different communities. But at the end of the day, I think what Edmontonians are looking for from EPS is accountability, transparency, and if we do have those, then their answers are there.
Hmm. Hmm. And so this election is interesting for the city because it's the first time that we are seeing political parties at the municipal level. Are you
Mm.
involved with any of these parties? And if so, or if not, what does that mean for your campaign?
Yeah, so I am not part of any party. I'm an independent candidate. So I'm not affiliated with a party. I'm not supported by any elected officials or supported by any third-party advertisers. I truly believe that at the municipal level, we need to make sure that our support is from the city and the residents in it and not impacted by any special interest groups or political affiliations.
Hmm. And then, political affiliations or political alignment often helps voters understand a candidate's, broader values or perspectives.
Mhm.
Do you have any affiliations at the federal or the provincial level that you'd like to share?
I
No?
do not, and I no. And that was a conscious decision running for municipal politics, is I did not want to have those going in because it's very much we're solving everyday issues that impact everybody. So, and I've had many emails and many conversations where we speak about a certain issue that a resident had a concern about, whether it was, public schools and, the things that are happening there, healthcare or certain issues that they might have. And we just tackle them head on, each one individually, as opposed to where I stand overall.
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
Mhm.
that's wonderful. And Sarah, it's been so lovely to chat with you today. And if you're going to leave
Likewise.
one thing behind with our viewers, what would you want to
Mhm.
leave behind today?
I want them to think about a vote. That's the biggest thing, because a lot of people do not, and you'd be surprised the amount of people at the doors who choose not to. So make sure your family, friends, acquaintances, coworkers do encourage them to vote. Second is to really do your research on who you're voting for. Look at their political backgrounds. Are they answering your emails? If people are not able to reply back to you now, odds are they will not be engaged with you afterwards. And to think about leadership that shows up.
Wonderful. Well, I would like to echo some of those as well. To our viewers, please stay engaged, stay informed, and get out and vote. Edmonton in 2021 had a dismal voter turnout, and this year matters. And, the future of the city really matters. So get out there and vote. And thank you for being with us today, Sarah. It's been lovely to chat with you.
Thank you.